Welcome to Own the P&L, the podcast that makes small business finance simple for non-finance leaders. Hosted by John Marshall, CEO of Series Next Solutions. This show is built for COOs and integrators who want real financial clarity and control. Let's dive in.
Welcome to another episode. This is a solo episode, so it's your bi-weekly dose of mathletics. Except today we're going to take a diversion. We're going to talk about people, as in who's actually in your finance and accounting organization. So let's say you walk into a new organization, you're the COO, maybe you're full-time, maybe you're fractional, and the CEO says, oh, we have a controller. You say, okay, great. How's that going? He says, well, the controller's fine. We get our numbers, but every time I ask for a forecast, they look at me like I have two heads, and then they just never actually do it. I'm going to tell you why that happens and who might actually be in your organization, how titles in this space are oftentimes misaligned from what's actually there. So it's important to know that going into an organization, but I also want to help you evaluate it by telling you who's supposed to do what. What's a bookkeeper? What's a controller? And what's a CFO? How do you find those? Because oftentimes we walk in and there's a CFO, or, oh, there's a vice president of finance, but that's my CFO. And that person's actually a controller or even a full charge bookkeeper. We'll touch on that a little bit too. So I want to walk through them, starting with bookkeeper. What do they do? And how do we know what they're doing? So the bookkeeper, look, primary job is to get the numbers on the page. So if your company is in QuickBooks, there's a bank feed, right? And they're posting those financials. In some older systems, you may be taking an export from a bank and uploading it somewhere. But what you're doing is you're getting all of your bank's transactions onto the books and categorized wherever they should be. That bookkeeper, typical task at month end is going to be to reconcile the books. There's probably not much more than that. That's generally their role. They're going to take advice and direction from a CPA who may tell them what to do. So if you're in an organization where the books are really not used that much, they're just kind of for the CPA to get at the end of the year, you probably have an arrangement like that, and it's probably okay for them that way because that's been the goal. When you want to change that goal, let's say you want more accurate and consistent monthly numbers to help make business decisions rather than tax decisions, then you might have to add a little bit more juice to the organization. So let's move up to a controller. What does a controller look like in a small business? Well, first of all, if you are under 10 million or so in revenue, just roughly, you probably don't have a need for that person full-time, maybe even part-time. So for example, at Series Next, a controller level person, we essentially consider our onboarding to be all we really need in that space. Maybe a little bit of advice every now and then, because the controller is really thinking about accurate and consistent records, level 2 on that hierarchy of finance needs I've talked about. So they're going to be thinking about accrual entries and how to do that, and policies, and how to arrange your financials in a way that says something useful. So at the end of the month, that controller is not only reviewing your books for integrity, they're also able to run some analyses for you to tell you about the financial health of your organization so that you can make decisions in what you do. So it's a more proactive role. With a CPA and dealing with taxes, things like that, they're going to be a partner with that CPA because they're going to own the books rather than really the CPA owning books and policies. But they need that CPA advice for how to make sure the data flows to them so that they can do what they need to do for taxes. So that controller becomes a more proactive role in what they're doing. Now, what we see in some of these smaller companies and how we kind of approach it a lot is we do some of that controller level work at the outset, and we're able to hand off the execution of those decisions to a bookkeeper, because that bookkeeper is doer in what they do. Now, practically in a small business organization, if you have somebody full-time that you call controller, that person is probably also keeping your books, they're probably also paying your bills and sending your invoices and all those things. And as you grow, you probably end up hiring in underneath that person. First, a bookkeeper, maybe you might call them a clerk is what they used to call it. We would call it just an accounting operations person to do payables, receivables, payroll, things like that. But that person in a smaller business organization practically looks like that. So you might see that. You might see somebody called controller and be like, oh my gosh, this person's doing the books. They may be doing some controller level work too. Or they may just be what we call a full charge bookkeeper. I say we call it, it's an industry term. That means that a full charge bookkeeper is one that can operate independently. They're not going to think about how to implement the process that gets the data in, the accounting policy behind what they do. They're probably not looking at you, that full charge bookkeeper, and saying, well, we need to be tracking customer deposits for this or that reason, for cash management. But that's what that looks like. So then what's a CFO? I was going to say fractional CFO. They do the same thing. The CFO is more forward looking. So now we're getting to the kind of practical matter of, why did I ask that controller to do a cash flow forecast and they won't do it? It's because finance, if you just think broadly, especially in small organizations, finance is forward and accounting is backwards. It's kind of like a fundamentally different goal and way of working. And so when you ask somebody over here to work over here, they usually don't like it. And it works the other way too. If you have somebody in your organization who is a CFO that maybe came up from the financial analyst world, where they're used to like building projections and things like that, asking them to go and help with, building the monthly financial statements at the end of the month and putting that process in place, they might look at you like you have two heads. I mean, I have seen CFOs that are absolutely allergic to the accounting function. So here's why. Backwards looking accounting is like creating a box score for a game where you have all the player stats and it's all got to go in one spot. There's a correct answer based on what happened. And so that accounting brain it's always finding a correct answer. And I can tell you, because I have it, you get an immense amount, like an irrational amount of satisfaction when the two numbers that you need to say the same thing, or you can't find this thing and you have the discrepancy and you solve it. It's like way too satisfying. On the other hand, if you look at the other side of the coin, where you start looking forward and you're dealing with things like predicting what's going to happen, there's no correct. I could make your organization beautiful in 12 months, doubling in size on paper in a plan, or I could make it grow 10%. Or I could make a plan for you to dismantle the whole thing. But none of it's real when I do it. We use that information to make decisions and essentially place our bets in life, right? Am I going to hire this person? Yes. Can I afford to do it right now? Yes, because I can see where the cash is going to go. So it's just a fundamentally different thing. All right, so I want you to think about your own organization, having kind of gotten that download of forward-looking finance, CFO type person. More depth on CFO is available in the 3 Types of CFOs episode, by the way, special plug. Versus the accountant. I say accountant. The accounting side, where you might have a bookkeeper, a full charge bookkeeper, which is really just varying levels of independence for the person who accomplishes what needs to be accomplished to give yourself the right financials at the end of the month. Versus a controller who's going to be thinking about policy and process and analysis of the financials at the end of the month. So when you walk in to your organization, who is in that seat and what does that mean for you in terms of what you can expect from them and what language you might have to speak with them along the way? I hope that helps you think through where to go with all of this. Maybe you're going to make a hire sometime. Think about it in that direction. That's really all I have today. We got it around 10 minutes. Finally, next time I'm going to have somebody on. At the recording of this episode, all I can tell you is it's the summer in New Orleans and it's really, really hot. So I hope it's better where you are. See you next week.
Thanks for tuning in to Own the P&L. If this episode helped you think differently about your numbers, share it with another operator who needs it. This podcast is all about helping COOs and integrators take ownership of their P&L, gain future financial clarity, and run their business with confidence. Be sure to subscribe. And if you want support financing your operational terms or cleaning up your accounting dumpster fire, reach out. See you next time.